Alrighty. Can you see my screen, guys?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. So the conversation today is the first of a three-part series of EQ conversations, and it really started with the coaching conversation I did with the results coaching group, and I thought I'd share it with some more people or a wider audience and expand it a little bit. So the way I look at EQ from an EQ perspective, oops, I did something wrong. There we go. Oh yeah, just in terms of all the lovely niceties of online conferencing etiquette, if we can all keep our mics on mute and use the chat section for questions, that would be great. And for those who've got low bandwidth, we'll keep video to a minimum. If we do grow in terms of numbers, I was going to use breakout rooms, otherwise we'll just have a small group conversation right here. But yeah, I am running the call from home. I do have a lot of dogs and parrots in the house, so there may be some strange noises occasionally. So just warning everybody. So when it comes to EQ, I think it's really important that we think about it from three different perspectives. And the model that I use for EQ is the 6 seconds model. And it's a really powerful model. So the first part of emotional intelligence is about knowing yourself. And know yourself is really about what we do. It's knowing how I feel and what makes me feel the way I do. So we talk about emotional literacy, being able to explain your feelings, being able to talk about your feelings, being able to name your feelings. And we also talk here about how you recognize patterns and feelings. So for example, when you're exhausted, when you're tired, when you've had a rough day, this is where you would come in and you would have that conversation around, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and therefore I might not be in my best self right now. Whereas other times you might have had a fantastic day, you might have got the best deal you've had in a long time, you're excited, you're celebrating, and you may be in a different place. So know yourself is all about how you recognize your own emotions and your own patterns within those emotions. The second part to the model is about choose yourself. And choose yourself is what you do with that information. Because if you understand how you're feeling, if you know what triggers you to feel a certain way, you start to have the ability to be conscious in your choices, to consciously choose and be intentional about how you go about things. And this will enable you to be more focused and more intentional in how you apply yourself. But the real liberating part of emotional intelligence is the grow yourself element. And this is the part that is really, really powerful, because this is why we do the stuff we do. This is what we call the noble goals. This is the stuff that motivates us, excites us, and gets us ready to be able to take ourselves to that next level, the next element of empowerment. And today's conversation is really focusing on the first step, which is know yourself. And we'll move into choose yourself and grow yourself in the subsequent webinars. So we're going to be talking a lot about know yourself, and it's not just going to be me today. It's a bit of a practical workshop as well. So the first thing I'd like is if everyone can just have a look at the chart, think about it, and think about how are you feeling right now? And just the word. You can type it up in the chat, or you can share it, or you can unmute and share it. But just what is the word that you're feeling right now? How are you feeling? So for me at the moment, I'm actually feeling a sense of calm. I'm feeling a sense of anticipation because I'm excited about today. And those are the feelings I'm feeling right now. So perhaps who'd like to start the conversation in terms of how you're feeling? I'm going to pick on you if you don't volunteer.
No, here I am. I'm here. I was trying to work. I work on two screens. I was trying to work out where my microphone was so I could unmute it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a difficult thing to describe. I can't think of the word right now, but I'm at a point where I've spent so much time converting my work to online, and now I'm in that sort of space between wrapping it up now and starting to promote it.
Okay.
And it's almost it's a reticence to move on, but it's at the same time it's knowing that all the work I've put into it is now, you know, it's time now to reap the fruits.
Okay.
So I don't know if I've explained.
And how does that
correctly.
make you feel, though, Dave?
I think tentative.
Okay.
Yeah, tentative would be a good way to describe it.
Okay.
That I'm,
Thank you.
you know, yeah, I think, yeah, tentative does it.
Thank you for sharing.
Cool.
Tabeka, Ricardo, how are you guys feeling right now?
Okay. I responded on the chat, but I would, if I'm trying to sum it all up, because sometimes you feel more than one thing at once, or more than one feeling at once. But I think the strongest one for me today, right now in this moment, would be enthusiasm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And Ricardo?
Yeah, for me, I think it's a very isolated one. I put there concerned.
Okay.
And it all encompasses, you know, I'm worried, I'm nervous, and it's all about to this day because we have just finalized the plan for 2020, the eco plan for 2021, and the strat going forward, and I don't see good numbers.
Okay.
And, so yeah, that's the. But most of the day, I'm feeling more hopeful because I'm not reading the news anymore, and I'm so glad that I skip all the COVID topics.
Okay.
And I just go to something else, you know.
Okay.
But yeah.
Excellent. And I think, guys, this is the first step of EQ, is actually just recognizing what it is that's going on inside of you. And when we talk about EQ, when you can name the feeling, it takes you to the next level. And one of the reasons for this is your emotions are there to tell you something. They are messages to you. So when you think of your emotions, you need to think of them as something that tells you a story, something that tells you something about what you need to be doing. So if you think about negative emotions, if you think about anger, frustration, even words like concern, these are words that are saying to you, I need to do something. I need to take some form of action. So it'll be quite interesting to think about, if you think about the calls to action, and you go back to the screen here, where we look at all the different feelings, and maybe just pick a feeling, not one you're feeling right now, but one that is a negative emotion, and perhaps think about what it could be that is causing that, if you were to think of the story behind the emotion. So for example, if I think of the word bitterness, bitterness might be something that comes about because something is going on in that person's life that they regret. Something has happened that they regret, and they are not able to get past it, and therefore they become bitter. But if they deal with the thing that they've regretted, they may get past the emotion of bitterness. So if you were to choose an emotion here and try and think about what is the potential story behind that emotion and share it with us, that would be really great. I'm not sure who's brave enough to be the first.
I've been through this a couple of times, Chantal, so you know, in the training and everything. So the first one I would pick on, because I know a number of people that are actually in this sort of, I don't know, this feeling, and that is anger.
Okay.
I know a number of people that are feeling a lot of anger and negativity because of what has happened during the COVID times, during these last 4 months. You know, in that some people have been retrenched and they're sitting now, you know, without a job. So there's this huge anger at their previous employer for being feelingless, and there's a huge anger directed just at the world in general because they don't know who to focus it on because of this COVID, you know.
There's a lot of anger in the world right now.
Yes. And also, you know, people in our position as consultants losing a lot of their work.
Yeah.
And their income. And now all of a sudden, after living comfortably, suddenly, you know, you're on the bones of your butt and you're struggling like crazy.
And you're suddenly trying to figure out how to pay who and what to pay when.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So those are the two, or those are the feelings and the cause that I would.
Okay.
And Dave, if I pick up from where you left, I'm quite okay with my anger because I directly straight to the Chinese and with all my strength and power, but in any case, from the same side you're coming on the COVID, the feeling that I see here is a lot of people as well, especially on my circle, the running community, is frustration. And there was a huge amount of preparation for comrades.
Yes.
And out of a sudden it's cancelled, you know, and then it's seeing the hard work and the time that you lost, the time that you put into the training to be ready, and then it's all gone. And this feeling that I have, it's so deep. It really even, you know, like interferes with my personal life, with my family. But in any case, but it's interesting because I'm trying to manage this and working differently to get away with that, you know. But the anger issue is sorted. I'm pretty okay with the Chinese.
For now. Dear. Okay.
I don't know why haven't you aimed it at the pangolin, Ricardo?
Oh dear. Tobacco?
Poor animal, eh?
Yeah, I think I shared most of the feelings I've shared in at some particular point during this period. But I think if I were to pick one negative one, I think it would be, I don't know, is they anxious here? I'm trying to look.
It doesn't have to be on here. You can choose one that you in your head.
Yeah, I think anxiety. A lot of people are just anxious because you don't know. Things are taking turns so quickly and it's unpredictable. And the one day it's this and we figured out something, and the next this doesn't matter. So there's just a lot of anxiety, and the anxiety of also expecting the worst, even when you feel the situation is already worse as it is right now. So I think, yeah, that's a negative feeling, which I think we've all felt during this time, or are feeling at some point, where we're confronted with something, or we begin to witness some of the impacts of COVID-19. I mean, the other day, I went to the bank, and there's a small shop that was next to the bank, which I used to normally go and get my screen protectors from and chargers from, and it's closed. And it wasn't the only shop which I've seen which is closed. And it's really sad, and it makes you so anxious now, how long or how big the impact is going to continue to be when you see businesses already closing down as it is.
And I think I'm loving this stuff because this conversation is really talking to the fact that we need to do stuff with these emotions. We can't just be feeling emotions, because we need to do stuff with that information. And that's where emotional intelligence comes in, is it provides us with information to make decisions. And knowing yourself and recognizing these emotions is the very first step in that process. Now, today is also about leading with EQs. The second part is also about making sure we recognize it in others. And if you think about it, when we look at other people, what we see is an indication of what they feel. They don't come out and say, you know what, I'm feeling anxious today, or I'm frustrated. I think of Ricardo and his story about preparing for comrades and how it impacted on the family. What Ricardo felt versus what his family saw are probably two very different things. And it's the same if you think about the people that you lead. And what are some of the behaviors that we are seeing right now that perhaps are not constructive
Chantal,
behaviors?
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you just excuse me for about 10 minutes? I have a crisis. My 89-year-old mother-in-law just fell. So I've got to go and sort her out.
Okay. Good luck. Okay. So I think the next question, or the next part of the conversation, is what do we see when we look at these people who are experiencing emotions? What are the behaviors that we see, and what emotions might they indicate to us? So if you think of someone on your team, if they're feeling angry, if they're feeling hurt, what would be the behaviors that we see? How would that translate into behaviors and actions? Any thoughts?
Okay, can you just rephrase just the last bit of a question? So what are the behaviors that we associate with the feelings that we've said, and then the last part?
So now we're looking at the other person, so other people. And if you, for example, think of someone who is angry or frustrated or anxious, what would be the behaviors we would see in that individual? How would they sort of present themselves to you?
Grumpy, short-tempered, agitated, withdrawn, perhaps not wanting to interact or engage. Or if they do engage, not engaging fully, like yes, no, fine. What else? Maybe just like this very stern posture of sort of like looking very guarded and not wanting people to come into their space, like a wall. I see a wall.
Okay.
The physical point, like a red face or kind of thing, you know, a bit of shivering, you know. There's a lot of physical points that you could pick it up as well, like the body language as well.
Yeah. And I think what's important is that as we build our EQ and our emotional literacy, we start to recognize different things in different people as well. So if you think about two different people and you think about the word anger, for some people when they're angry, it's very loud, it's very vocal, it's very the red face Ricardo spoke about. Whereas for others, when it's anger, it's about they go quiet, they withdraw into themselves. If I think of my one daughter, she becomes exceptionally quiet. And these are things that we see in these individuals. But different people might respond differently to the same emotion. So as leaders, we need to recognize that. How do you think it'll help us to be better leaders if we can see those things?
One, I think it can help us in, firstly, then detaching whatever the behavior of the person from us and personalizing it. And then we would know that there's probably something that they are dealing with. And perhaps then we would know when to sort of set aside how we feel or what we expect of them at that particular time, and try to enter into their space and understand their feeling or their behavior. I think it just makes us so much more aware and less into ourselves and about the business of the day.
Yeah.
Not that it should stop, but yeah, it gives us a moment to be able to recognize these feelings and try to probe into them if possible.
Cool. I like that. Ricardo?
Yeah, I would add that this kind of situation just pushed the leader to do what he really needs to do, which is to care about people. Yeah, it will force you to look at the person. Yeah, besides the job. Yeah, and if you live with a person 9 hours a day for 5 days a week, sometimes it's more than what you spend with your family. So if you're leading them, yeah, and if you want to be a leader, you need to care about the people, and the person. So this kind of situation just force you to make sure that you are aware of that person's normal reaction. Because if you don't know the normal reaction, it'll be impossible for you to understand if they're acting strange or not.
I love that. If you don't know the normal action, it's impossible to see when they're acting strange.
And then there's another danger. Then you apply your normal into that person. He's not screaming, so he's not angry. He's not angry because he's quiet. Yeah.
And that's true, hey? Because sometimes we do. We project our own, project our own actions and ways of dealing with an emotion on others, and they might do it differently. I like that. Thank you. Dave, are you back yet, or are you still? No, sounds like he's back on still.
No, I'm back.
Are you back? Did you pick up what we were talking about? We were just talking about.
Yes. Yeah. So what I want to. I'm sorry. I've been here for about 5-7 minutes.
Okay.
Now.
Is Mama right?
So, yeah, no, she's fine.
Okay.
She was trying to get up out of a chair and she lost her balance and sort of rolled off onto the ground.
Okay.
Yeah. Problem is she suffers from onset dementia.
Oh dear.
And at the same time, she struggles to walk. She's very immobile.
Okay.
So, she just needs help. And my daughter's not strong enough to pick her up.
Cool.
So, she's a little waif. So,
oh dear.
Yeah, so she came running in here calling me. Anyway, so what I always tried to do when I was in these positions was, first of all, to try and understand the triggers. That what sets these people off. And as Ricardo said, when you spend 8-10 hours a day, 5 days of the week with people, you tend to pick these things up if you're open to them. So it's always listening to people, listening to what they're saying, listen to what they're not saying. And obviously not to personalize it, because it's not about you, it's about them. And so what I used to do for some of them was those that ranted and raved, I used to let them vent.
Okay.
And get it all out, because what I saw was if you try and stop them, you stifle them, and their frustration just gets greater, and their anger just increases. So I would let them rant, and then I would start with some open questions, and my questions wouldn't be around work; they would be around them first off. From that caring, being open with them and making sure that everything is all right on their side personally before because it might have been a personal issue. Maybe the husband and wife had a major fight before they left for work, and now at work he gets into a fight with or into an argument with somebody else and takes all of his frustrations out on that individual. You know,
Yeah.
I've been in those positions where things like that have happened. So yeah, so that's how I would deal with it.
Okay. Any other thoughts from Tobeka, Ricardo, before I move on?
No, none for me, thank you.
Okay. All right. So that was really just introducing the first competency of EQ that we talk about in the 6 seconds model, which is emotional literacy. And emotional literacy is the ability to accurately identify and interpret feelings. And I think you guys have really done a good job of that. So I think that's something that you're good at, listening to the conversation we've just had. The second skill that's required for this particular element of know yourself is exactly what Dave was talking about. It's about recognizing the triggers. And one of the things that happens is if we don't recognize the triggers, there's 3 potential responses to emotions. The first is, I'm going to start at the bottom, acceptance. And when we accept emotions, but we don't deal with them, so you kind of accept that I'm angry and you be angry, but you don't deal with it. You don't deal with the cause. You don't deal with making things different.
You're going to have to go to the shop.
Then there is a potential to build up that emotion. The second potential response to emotion is when you're engulfed or overwhelmed by that emotion. It's where you are so overwhelmed, you tend to react as opposed to respond. So there's a difference between reacting and responding. In that reacting is when you have those angry outbursts, when, I don't know if any of you have ever had a lady wander into your office and burst into tears. It's the overwhelming feeling of not coping with those emotions. And then there's the empowered response. This is the response where we recognize the emotion, we name the emotion, and then we choose how we're going to what we're going to do about it. So it's quite important when dealing with emotions that the better you get at emotional literacy and the better you get at recognizing the triggers, the more empowered you become and the less overwhelmed or engulfed you feel about those emotions. I don't know if there's any thoughts before I move forward. Okay. And to help us with dealing with those emotions and recognizing it is this tool, which I absolutely love. Because if we start to take an emotion like anger, so when someone cuts me off mid-conversation, I feel angry, and then I get my back up, might be an example. Or when someone cuts me off in the traffic, I feel angry and then I drive badly. Or I get grumpy at work. Or when I come home and the house is messy, I feel frustrated and it exhausts me. So it's a tool to try and take triggers to emotions and help us to start recognizing those patterns. So I'd love for you guys just to think of a situation that triggers a particular emotion and test it out and try it with us and see how it feels. Who wants to go first? There's a deathly silence. Should I practice another?
Ooh, it's tricky. Feels like you're admitting to some of your
flaws.
Yes. I would say that when I feel, I hope I'm gonna do this right. When I feel, so when someone, when I feel like someone doesn't recognize me or see me, I feel undermined. Then I will retaliate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for being brave.
Okay, thank you.
How did that feel, Tobeka, despite the fact you're exposing yourself to the world?
It felt like I'm actually going back and recognizing my behaviors and linking them. It felt like I was going back and owning up to what I felt, and that my response was based on what I felt, and in that it's my own thing that I feel.
Okay. Cool. Who else is brave enough to give it a try?
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
And Chantel, you have seen it already, so it won't be new for you. When my team don't meet their promises, yeah, and their deadlines, I feel frustrated. Then I start to micromanaging them, and this is not good. Instead of understanding why the promise was not met.
Okay.
But this is an automatic reaction for me. This is something that I'm actually working at the moment.
I was about to say, the fact that you verbalized it here is the first step in making a change.
Yeah.
It's really important. By verbalizing these things, it helps us to become conscious. It takes us from the subconscious to the conscious. So well done.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think from my side, when I was back in industry, and I didn't have the support from my superiors, or I got hung out to dry, I would become I would become angry, but I would become disengaged at the same time. And then it would take a huge amount of effort to actually re-engage.
Okay.
Because I felt that, the trust has been broken, because I would place my trust in that individual and then get hung out to dry. And that causes the whole disengagement process.
Okay. I
have done a lot of work on it though. So.
Some really good examples here. Now to turn it around and think about, if you're working with other people, how could you use this little model to perhaps help them to become more conscious of their emotions?
Chantel, sorry, guys, that's my turn now. The little domestic emergency now. I have to leave for a while. Then,
okay.
Yeah, I'll try to be back.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. So, Tobeka, Dave, how would you go about using this in a leadership role or in a role that you currently are part of?
I've always had this belief that trust is earned, and that people have this expectation of trust just because they have the position, almost like the same expectation of respect. Whereas you may respect the position, but you don't necessarily respect the individual because they haven't earned it. And so you need to be true to your word. And if you are going to commit to something, you need to stick to it.
Okay.
And if if your team does something for you and it's not appreciated by those above you, you need to stand up and be counted and not, just give the hospital pass on. Okay. And that happens a lot. Unfortunately, it happens a lot in industry.
Yeah.
Where people do that. You can't really do it much in our current roles because there aren't very many people to blame it on. And if you do it, you lose all the respect of your clients and there's no more business.
An interesting thought there, Dave. So as a consultant, if you face one of these situations, how can you diplomatically use these tools to get the message across without losing face?
Okay, so what I normally do is I tackle the subject up front, okay? And I would say to the individual, and I do, that I don't believe you've acted correctly. And I believe that in this circumstance, with the information you've got, you need to actually stand back and be more supportive of, you know, of your team, because a lot of the work I do is with the teams.
Okay.
And I always work through the superior, the executive or the manager. And my expectation is that they will support their people. Otherwise, what did they brought me in for?
Okay.
So I tend to tackle it head on.
Cool. And Tabeka?
Well, for me, even though I don't think I've necessarily used this model, but I think it's always an approach of mine in the role that I'm in, being an HR person. Sometimes you're confronted with conflict or situations where you need to be neutral, and the only way to be neutral is to probe and ask questions in understanding the situation, what happened, how the person felt. So, but I think you don't have to be like demeaning when you do it, when you ask these questions. I think it's just about showing the person that you want to hear their side out and you want to understand, not just hear, but just listen to what they have to say and understand why they're feeling that they're feeling, and that whether it's right or wrong, but their feelings and why they did that is not disregarded. Fantastic. Whether or not it was the best approach, then that becomes a different discussion. But I think there always is an opportunity in any situation where we're confronted with the problem to try and unpack and get the greater detail. And it's really about setting your emotions aside or your view aside, because very often we enter into situations with the preconceived idea of view or thought, sometimes even a conclusion about how we're going to end this. So for me, really, it's about, this gives you an opportunity, this method, to hear the person out, their side, and then take it from there and use what they've said to you to try and be in their shoes.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you for that. Cool. So yeah, it's also a very useful tool. I think both of you mentioned you've got children, to use with children, teaching them to use it to articulate. So for example, I don't know, when mommy's on the phone, I feel like she doesn't love me, therefore I throw a tantrum. But it does also work with them as well. Dave, I don't know how old your daughter is. I think Ricardo's disappeared, but he's got small kids.
Oh no, all my children are adults.
All adults. Okay, so you.
Yeah, they're all adults. Yeah, my daughter, she's my foster daughter.
Okay.
She came to visit us the weekend before lockdown.
Oh.
And yeah, so she's been with us throughout lockdown. It's really been great.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And she's a qualified chef.
Are you joking?
So,
my foster daughter is too.
So we've picked up a huge amount of picked up a bit of weight. Let's just put it that way.
Some
COVID cover.
Yeah, no, we've got the same problem. My foster daughter is also a chef, and she also came home the day before lockdown. Yeah. Okay.
So we eat like kings.
So yes.
Yeah, and all the fancy stuff. Yeah.
Fantastic. So the last two skills we've been practicing are really about recognizing the patterns, and most importantly, it's about identifying reoccurring reactions and behaviors. Because what you will find is your neural pathways kind of carve themselves in your brain. And if you continuously have a trigger that triggers a certain emotional behavior, it kind of burns a path in your brain, and you have to create new pathways and new thinking. And the best way to do that is through being conscious and exactly using the tools that we've had. When I, then I feel, then it's bringing it to your conscious. It's creating an awareness that immediately helps you to start thinking differently about those emotions. It takes a lot of practice, but it is something that can be done. It is something where there is a possibility to move forward. So if I go back to the 6 seconds model of EQ, which we've been building on, the first talk, which is today's talk, was about know yourself. And the skills and competencies in know yourself are emotional literacy and recognizing patterns. The second skill is choose yourself. And choose yourself is about consciously, intentionally choosing how you're going to behave. And the skills that are included there are things like consequential thinking, the ability to navigate emotions, engaging intrinsic motivation, and optimism. So I'll be going through those in about 4 weeks' time with you if you're keen to join the next conversation. And then the final competency, which is give yourself. It's about what motivates you, what drives you. And that competency is really about empathy and noble goals. It's about understanding how others feel and putting yourself in their shoes, but it's also about your purpose, your why, your reason for being. And those three things, know yourself, choose yourself, and give yourself, make up the 6 seconds EQ model, which is something that I'm quite passionate about, if you haven't realized already. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you guys for joining. It was a small group, so we've got through the conversations quite quickly because the intention was breakaway rooms. But yeah, on the 22nd of July, I am planning the second session. So if you are available and keen, please book it in your diary now and drop me your email addresses and I'll send through that meeting request. Any questions, thoughts, anything that you would like to add in closing?
No, nothing from my side, but just it's interesting how even just a few moments to take time to think about your behavior and to talk about your emotions can unpack so much and lead you to think about so much. So yeah, great start. I look forward to the next sessions and thank you.
Thanks, Tabeka, and thanks so much for joining.
Pleasure.
Just a request from my side, Chantal, if you could,
yes.
That slide of the 6 second model.
Yes.
If you could just send that to me, please.
Not a problem. I'll drop the
with
slide deck to
with
you.
the captions on it.
Yes. No, I'll do
Please,
that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Cool.
And yeah, I'll see you on Friday. Well,
I won't be joining on Friday this time.
Oh, won't you? Okay.
No, I've got a horrible another meeting. But
okay, no, it's fine.
Yeah,
I'll
be in touch.
give your apologies.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
And Ricardo, I think, is gone now.
Yeah, he went to go and sort out a family crisis.
And then he didn't come back. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I can go stop. Chips is on here. Okay. Shabs, are you there still? Shabs?